Hey everybody, welcome back to another classic movie review. My name is Dalton Burdett, and today we're going to be talking about Army of Darkness. This is the third film in the Evil Dead trilogy. This one is also directed by Sam Raimi and stars Bruce Campbell as the character of Ash. The plot of this movie is that Ash has been sent back in time to the Middle Ages, and he must deal with this newfound lifestyle and try to find his way back home by confronting evil where it was born. Now, a major fundamental difference with this movie compared to the other films is that this film is through and through a satirical comedy. There is almost no horror elements. There are very few. So, the evolution of this franchise was horror comedy, straight comedy, which is not something you see over most franchises, and it is quite interesting. One thing that this film does incredibly well is its comedy. Much of the humor works. Anything from just the quippy one-liners, which this movie is full of one-liners.
Yo, she-bitch. Let's go.
And also just more of these silly Sam Raimi elements work as well, for the most part. Bruce Campbell's performance is, I'll say it, iconic in this movie. He owns every scene that he is in, and whenever he's on screen, you just immediately want to know what he's going to say next.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick!
And he really fully realizes the character of Ash, who started out as a scared teenager to a mentally anguished person to someone who's just completely fed up with all the bullshit and wants to go home. This is also the biggest budget of all three films, and you can kind of tell the moment it starts. This was a Universal film, so they did have more of a financial backing with this. So the just production quality in general is a little higher, although it wasn't like a hugely budgeted movie by any stretch of the imagination, so there were still obviously some monetary constraints, just not as much as the previous installments. This movie does a decent job of having its tone just be consistently silly throughout the movie and it not get tiresome, although this film doesn't work nearly as good fundamentally as the first two films, even though it is very different from them. The previous two films kind of capture your attention and hold on to it from beginning to end, where for me personally, this movie does kind of lose me a little bit in the second act. It is consistently silly and funny, and while it's wildly entertaining, the overall story structure and, character development kind of takes a backseat to the forefront of just being silly and fun. The previous films did a good job of being able to balance all the tones while also pushing character and story forward, where this film, the story and character almost take a backseat to just the forefront of, hey, let's be really silly. And while a lot of the humor and silliness works, I just wish that they wouldn't have taken such a backseat to things that could propel the story and characters forward. And overall, especially Ash does go on a journey and have his own arc, but it wasn't as perpetually moved forward as previous installments were. This movie is like cheesiness galore, and it's just so much fun. Like, if you're having an awful day, you can just pop in this movie and thoroughly enjoy the rest of your day. And I mentioned earlier that this movie has tons of one-liners, and I just want to give a little mini presentation of some of the one-liners to you right now.
Your shoelace is untied. Good. Bad. I'm the guy with the gun. Hail to the king, baby.
So for a while, this was the end of the journey of the Ash character, and they eventually went on to do the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show, which is excellent if you haven't watched it. And another fun thing I'll add about this movie is like the medieval elements, like, with King Arthur and the knights and stuff. It was an interesting setting for the continuation of this story, and it utilized what it had to its comedic effect greatly. A bunch of spoof humor in it as well. Sam Raimi's direction isn't as strong in this movie as it is in the previous films, and it might be just because while the other films do have his unique style and sensibility, it was also more of a focused direction, and this film's direction is not nearly as focused as the other two, although I don't think anyone other than Sam Raimi could have pulled off a movie quite as entertaining as this. So this movie just kind of just a really big of a mixed bag for me. It's incredibly funny, it's incredibly entertaining. It's just not as well of a told story as the other two movies. While this movie is not a bad movie at all, it doesn't quite reach the just franchise groundbreaking heights as the other two do. So while I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, I do think it does have more problems than the other two, and overall, I'm going to give Army of Darkness a B. And also, before we go, there is one more thing that I wanted to add really quick. We here at Movie Nights are really happy to announce a partnership with the Great Movie Radio Show. I'm horrible at memorizing things, so I'm going to read off of my notes if you'll indulge me. The Great Movie Radio Show. Join hosts Chris and Gabe on a magical journey into movies with special guests who used to work on or were inspired by the magic of the Great Movie Ride. Tune in as they discuss anything and everything film, working on the ride, and their original segment Around the Track, which they take favorite movie scenes and create their own Great Movie Ride. You can find them online at thegmrshow.com and listen to their podcast available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Ryan and I will eventually collaborate with them and be on their show at some point, but right now we're just doing this little partnership with them because both groups really love movies. We love talking about movies in our own different and unique ways, and we just wanted to promote more movie love out there for everybody. So please go check them out, and I will leave the link to their website in the description of this video below. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.